Fontaine, and you're listening to the HomeBuyers Hour on WCPT AM 820, where the facts matter. Today in the studio with us, we have, I know he keeps calling other people young, but I'm going to actually start calling him a little bit on the young side. His name is Tony Mattar. He works with the Chicago Crib team over at Compass Real Estate. I think I said that right. Tony, if you don't mind, give us a little bit about you. Say hi to somebody special and tell us, why are you on this show with me today? Hard question, right?
A very hard question.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Joey. Really excited to be here and chat with you guys today. A little bit about me. I am the founder of the Chicago Crib team at Compass. 9 years in the business and lead a sales team. We are working all over the city and the burbs. We don't specialize in one specific neighborhood. We'll help you no matter where you're at. Renters, buyers, sellers, investors, we do everything. And we're based out of the River North office in right at Kinsey and State. So we're right by the House of Blues downtown.
Nice. And I think we're going to get more involved with, the market. I know we're going to do a lot more talking about the way everything's been changing recently, and it's such a seller's market and multiple offers. But before we get into that, I want to still get to introduce Patrick and Joey. Patrick, if you don't mind, give us the hoobaloo, and don't forget to do the pointing that you need to be doing.
Right. I know what some of those words mean. But yeah, my name is Patrick Loftus. I am a real estate lawyer. My law firm is called Loftus Law LLC, and I will be in trouble with both my wife and our cat if I don't say hi to our cat.
Little baby.
Hi, little baby girl, little Miss Naya T cat. And of course, hello to my beautiful wife, Anna.
Nice. And my name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. And our website is www.thehomeinspectors.com. And right now, the most important person in the next 10 minutes is going to be our real estate broker, Joey Matthews.
I think he's the mortgage broker.
I apologize for that. I did a little slip of the tongue.
Thanks for coming on the show, Tony.
But anyway, what's going on in the financial world? I know there's, the calm before the storm is what I'm hearing today on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, in the world of strange words that Patrick doesn't know, the market's gone cattywampus on us.
I love it.
What on earth are you? Okay,
Yeah.
Keep going.
I don't know, but there's
All right,
more
right.
words coming out like that for the rest of the day today. So fasten your seatbelts. I'm going to shmooey those words all over you.
Do I know English even?
I'm going to have to dig deep into my vocabulary today.
I think so. So what's going on, Joey? I know that we're waiting for some report to come out this afternoon. And today is Wednesday, if you're listening to this on the radio on Saturday morning. But what are we expecting today, Joey?
Yep, it is Wednesday, March 22nd. Today, the Fed is deciding whether or not to increase the funds rate again. There's an 85% chance they'll do a quarter. There is a outside chance they will not raise at all. There's also an outside chance they do a full 50 bips, so 0.5%. In all honesty, the market has been very calm this morning, which is nice to see. I think that kind of leads to more speculation that they do just go ahead and increase the Fed funds rate 25 bips, 0.25%. I do not think it's a very good idea. I know that the Fed is looking to combat inflation, but we have seen with SVB, we've seen with Credit Suisse, we have seen with Signature Bank, all of these banks showing cracks, right? And it's because of the amount of stress that has been put on them by the Fed after coming out of a market in which they could not put their assets into investments that had long-term gains or create enough or send out enough money in the way of loans. So these banks, they went into receivership. The FDIC is still saying they're going to pay out almost all of the depository funds that individuals made. In reality, we will see that on our taxes one day, I have no doubt. But yeah, so when the Fed increases funds rate, the cost to borrow money, it puts a bigger strain on these banks and these sectors. And it's really niche banks that are feeling it. Like this was all venture capitalist banks, right? This as SVB is obviously was a tech centric bank out of Silicon Valley, obviously, and most of their depository, or I'm sorry, their accounts were in the tech field, right? And they were venture capitalists in the tech field. They would give loans out to all the startups. If you wanted money for a startup, you went to SVB, right?
Do they ever talk about the amount of startups that failed and the bank out there, they lost their funds on that?
I honestly haven't even looked at it. I just know that the way they were operating, the increasing your depository accounts by threefold over 2 years in the market they were in.
That's a lot.
It's insane because you can't sit on deposits. If you sit on deposits, you're losing money right away because you have employees to pay. So,
and then I heard rumors that they were investing in low yield bonds, basically.
Well, yeah. So they were buying the 10-year bond, right? It's a 10-year bond. It's a safe bond.
Two.
However, at the time that they were investing, it was under 2. They were buying these at 0.6% yield. For comparison's sake, today it's at a 3.6, right?
The way I understood it is that the problem was they effectively put too much of their available funds locked away in these bonds, and the problem there is that when your depositors, so the banking system is a reserve system, meaning the bank is not required to have at all times on hand enough money to give out everyone's money when they want it. Now, the problem that can arise, and that was about to, or maybe even did arise, is that if enough people lose confidence in your bank and then they decide they want their money to take it elsewhere, once that liquidity dries up, then there's no more money to give out, and everyone else who has their hand out saying, "Where's my money?" is stuck, which is why they stepped in when they did, rather than wait until there's a huge crowd of people with pitchforks and torches out in front of the bank.
It's a wonderful life. Jimmy Stewart lived this.
Right. But they start making babies, right? I'm talking about the dollar bills in the movie. When you say they, you mean the FDIC, Patrick, right?
Yeah. Well, the they in that the they that who stepped in and said, we are going to declare you insolvent, and we're going to step in and essentially act as a receiver. I'm sure I'm getting the details butchered on that a little bit, but that's
It's close enough. California regulators shut them down and they put them into receivership with the FDIC, and the FDIC, obviously, they only guarantee up to $250K deposits. However, 97% of the deposits into SVB were over $250K. So that's why it really became a problem, because now all
I didn't know that
people
number.
are out that money. Yeah.
My understanding from a banker person I know is that the FDIC, yes, it insures up to $250,000, but there's also private insurance you can get that will insure the money you have on deposit in the bank above and beyond the $250K. So if he is to be believed, and he is my main banker friend, Jim, shout out to you. He's gonna love that. That whether or not those folks had insurance, that would certainly affect whether the FDIC is going to, how much they're going to end up paying out. My biggest question that I don't know the answer to is, it seems that it was inevitable that rates would go up at some point. I just don't understand why they put all their money in 10-year treasuries when there's 3 and 5-year treasuries. They could have spread it around. I don't know. Maybe that's just the uninformed non-banker in me wondering about such things.
No, I think it's smart. I keep thinking about my days on the pension board, for the fire department, and we would move back and forth between stocks and bonds depending on what the market was doing, and I know when a lot of people panicked, and Tony, chime in anytime you want, but I know when we hit the 7-8 and the stocks were dropping like there's no tomorrow in our pension fund, that's when we bought, when everything was going down, and we ended up making a killing because it all came back. And we were heavily invested in stocks and very light on bonds at that time. And we were able to leverage the gains on that. And, and people wondering, they hear the word pension and it's, oh my God, all these liabilities. But the community that I worked for, Northbrook, Illinois, they never paid into our pension. There was only my 30 plus years there. I think there might have been 5 maybe years that they put in like 100,000 at most over a 30-year period. That's nothing. That's because we made enough money on the investments, and the pension fund was able to pay out everybody, and nobody. It was not a tax burden when it's done right. But you need good investors.
I think Patrick raises a really good question of why wasn't there the diversification, but it's also been really interesting to me to see some of the immediate ramifications of this situation on the real estate industry and specifically on large condo buildings. So I live in the Loop in a professionally managed building, and right away we were getting emails from the higher ups at, we're currently managed by First Service Residential. They sent out an email. They did an assessment of our bank accounts and our reserve funds and where they were allocated and how much was in each account. And technically, our building was above the threshold that's insured by the FDIC in a couple of our accounts.
So is that an actuary that you have to get to do that?
That I'm not sure about, but they were obviously making recommendations to spread our money around a little bit because you want to make sure that you're protected now that we're seeing these banks that had runs on them.
Interesting. Joey, if people have more questions about this, how do they get hold of you?
Oh, you can reach me at 630-235-2405. You can find me at thevaloannerd.com or across all of the social medias as the VA Loan Nerd.
I love that VA Loan Nerd stuff like there's no tomorrow. So how is the applications coming in? You guys getting busier or slower?
I have so many pre-approvals on the street right now. It's ridiculous. And
nice.
I mean, obviously, people are trying to buy the dip. I mean, you're getting pre-approved right when rates fall. Probably not going to work out in your favor. It may. I'm not saying it's not, but you should probably be pre-approved when you're ready to buy a house. At the end of the day, that's really when it matters. And with how much the 10-year Treasury bond has fallen, rates have not tracked as they normally would. So while they're down, they are not down nearly as far as I would expect. Hopefully when the Fed makes their announcement, we see some more relief in MBS. It's just been a very weird 2-week period for us. But
I'm going to show my ignorance right here. You said that people are trying to buy the dip.
No, buy the dip. When rates come down, everyone's like, oh, now I can go buy. Now I want to jump on the street.
Oh, and just the rates.
You already waited too long. Yes.
You've got to already be in process by that point.
Exactly. We can't lock you on a pre-approval. I apologize. I mean, there's programs where you can, but then you got to find that house, and that really rushes your search, and I think that's undue stress on a person.
Totally. Joey, so, I'm curious to know, do you feel like you have more buyers who are pre-approved right now who have been pre-approved for 6 or 12 months than in years past? Because I'm feeling like my pipeline is currently filled with not a tremendous amount of, but way more people who have been looking for 6, 9, 12 months and have not yet bought before, or, still not yet bought than ever before.
Yes, I have been updating pre-approvals for all of these people. And I obviously the big symptom of it is they got pre-approved. In the case of the 12-month pre-approval, I mean, rates a year ago we're still in the maybe high 3s, low 4s, right?
Exactly.
Because we hadn't really hit that point. So they've just been waiting for it to come back down. And finally, I just had one yesterday that said, hey, we can't do this anymore. We are ready to buy this house. And they put in an offer, and I will hear about the contract hopefully today. But, I mean, they were telling me every day, we're going to wait until it comes back to the 3s. I'm like, oh, my gosh. I can't tell you enough how bad of an idea that is. You will be renting until you're dead. Granted, I mean, will they come back to the 3s one day? Maybe for a short amount of time, but you're not going to see 2 years of 2s and 3s again. And I don't imagine.
Yeah, COVID too, an electric boogaloo.
All that's going to come back. My grandmother bought the boogaloo. We're getting more goofy words in here. My grandmother, I remember when she talked about her mortgage, that was at 2-3% or something like that. And I just rolled my eyes when I was first old enough to buy a house. I'm like, yeah, that's never going to happen, you know. And so I don't know. That was in what, the 40s maybe when she bought that house, 50s or something like that. The rates were that low, and we had to wait until 2020. You know, almost 80 years later. So I guess they're going to have to wait another 80 years and see if it comes back down again.
Good luck to them on that front. Yeah,
Right?
I think it really is difficult with those 12-month people that Joey mentioned, because those are the people that really have an anchor point in their mind that's so beyond the realm of possibility today, versus the people who, you know, even 6 months ago or a similar timeline where their anchor point is slightly higher and those expectations have readjusted to the higher interest rate environment. But those people whose friends were buying at the same time as them, and they didn't find a house, but their friend did, and their friend is locked in at 3.5%, those are the people that have a lot of anxiety about purchasing right now.
So how do you convince somebody? And I hate that word convince. I'm sorry. I don't.
Yeah,
I
know.
really
I didn't like that when you said it.
Me
Why
neither.
don't you say, how do you con someone?
No,
huh?
yeah, I might as well get right there.
Oh,
No,
Charlie.
It's like, no, but seriously, it's you know, I hate manipulation. All right, I hate being salesy. All right, so how do you educate somebody? How do you inform somebody? What do you share with them in order to let them know that, you know, listen, this is what I'm predicting the market's going to happen. And, you know, it's the chances of it going down are slim, and the chances of it going up and the prices going up are pretty high. I mean, is that a fair statement, first of all?
Yeah, it's a fair statement, and it's a really nuanced conversation because there's a couple of things at play here. First of which is going to be somebody's motivation. How badly do they need to move, right? Second is going to be, what is their current situation? Are they renting where the interest rate is 100% every month? Or do they already own a home and they don't necessarily need to make a move, right? Because the person who doesn't necessarily have to move and already owns a home, this might not be the best time, especially because it's a low inventory environment. So having informed decisions with those people so they can make the best decision for them is going to be really important. But then beyond that, I think we got into, you brought up the price appreciation, and I found it really interesting this past fall. I was at a conference and I heard this economist speak about how she predicts that prices will continue to appreciate throughout the rest of this decade, primarily because we've got supply mostly controlled by boomers who are staying in their homes much longer than ever before in homes that are too large for them, and they all refinanced when the rates were in the high 2s, low 3s, so their payments are really affordable. And on the flip side of that, millennials are now officially the largest generational consumer of real estate, and all of those people are having multiple children, they're needing to move from their condos into homes, or they're looking at homes in better school districts, and those homes just aren't available. So because of that, we should be, unfortunately, in a semi-short inventory environment for the next 8 to 10 years, which is just going to cause prices to continue to appreciate, even if it's at a slower clip than they did over the course of the pandemic.
I'm at the younger version of that boomer thing, and my children and stepchildren, they're all millennials. The one thing you failed to do, young man, is roll your eyes when you said that word boomer. All right? Because I know boomer is an insult. All right? Because those eyes need to be rolling when it comes in there. So, you know what? We just had somebody put up here a little while back, Chi-Town Real Estate. They put in their multi-bid situations are back. And I see it on my end when people make an appointment and then they cancel the appointments. Mm-hmm. All right, because they ended up losing the house. Patrick's nodding his head yes. Does that happen to you too? Do they come out and reach out to you right away, Patrick?
Sometimes you'll get someone that says, "Yeah, I'm about to go under contract on something," and then it doesn't ultimately come through. I mean, I suppose sometimes it means they hired another lawyer. But I'd say more often it's because it just didn't pan out, and I'll get a call from them 3-4 weeks later, and there will be a different property that they ultimately did get under contract on.
And that seems to be the hot topic now. And I guess I should get a little more clarification, Tony. What percentage of your clientele are buyers versus sellers?
So my business every year transitions more from buyers to sellers. Right now, I would say we're probably at about 60% buyers.
Okay.
But historically, I've worked with a tremendous amount of buyers over the course of my 9-year career.
And isn't that normal? People in the
Yeah.
beginning careers, they go for buyers, and then, I don't know, there was an old saying, list to last or
Yeah.
something. I don't know if that's still valid.
Yeah, that is a pretty typical progression of someone's career within the real estate industry. Obviously, there's going to be outliers if someone gets into it as a second or third career, and everyone they know already owns a home. That might fast track them on the front of getting listings. But yeah, I think especially because I got into the industry pretty young, that's a natural progression for things.
I love it. So now, how do you, and we'll talk with, give me the buyers or the sellers. I think the buyers is the more difficult, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the more difficult navigation. How do you help your clients? How do you educate your clients into getting them to navigate through this multiple offer and expectations of them, and preparing them what's going to happen? And I'm going to throw that same question at Patrick and Joey too. See where you guys come in, but please lead.
Well, luckily, I mean, we've had practice at that over the last couple of years.
Good point, yeah.
It has been something that we do every single day, is helping these buyers navigate a very difficult market where there's a ton of competition, and they need to be extremely, extremely informed from the absolute moment that we start working with them, because there's all sorts of information that they're going to need to be able to make the best decision for themselves throughout every step of this process. Examples of that are when we're making offers, I have very in-depth and long conversations with my buyers so that they understand all of the nuances of every single different lever that we can pull to potentially strengthen our offer. So things like making offers as is, things like providing appraisal gap coverage, things like escalation clauses, flexibility on closing dates, and not to say that every single buyer right now needs to be pulling all of those levers at once, but understanding every single nuance available to them versus in years past, not recent years, but in years past where it's been more of a buyer's market where we don't necessarily have to have as in-depth of a conversation because we can put an offer in and expect to negotiate back and forth. Right now, we only really get one shot, at least if the home is, a hot commodity in a good neighborhood, move-in ready, things like that. So we have to be able to have those conversations as the process progresses, and we can't play catch up. Otherwise, we're going to be at a disadvantage.
Patrick, anything to add?
Yeah, to set those expectations as soon as possible, I think is crucial, because everyone out there, sure, they see what the trends are, they see what is going on, but then they look at themselves and they say, well, I'm exceptional, I'm special. I know
I'm special.
I know what
Patrick,
I'm
we know
doing.
that.
I should be able to navigate this difficult market better than your average person, because I'm above average. And
how do you tell them that's a bunch of hooey?
well, that's where someone like Tony comes in and says, listen, I'm going to have some difficult conversations with you, but I'm also not going to treat you I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm not going to treat you like, well, you think you're so smart. No, you don't know. Well, I almost use a naughty word, but
yeah, I mean, I think it is trust in the agent, but beyond that too, sometimes people can't be told. You can tell them till you're blue in the face, and sometimes people have to learn the hard way. And I understand that after so many years within this industry, is that sometimes the only way for them to learn is to learn the hard way by losing out on the house, right? And sometimes I'm able to move mountains and still get them in the 11th hour because people will cancel the deal. You talked, Charlie, earlier about having inspections canceled. From my point of view, I think that actually could be because people are getting too trigger happy. And I've seen more people getting accepted offers who are then getting cold feet right after, which is opening up opportunities for backup offers from the second or the third person who put that offer in. So navigating all of those challenges, but also using a missed opportunity as a teachable moment And more often than not, when somebody loses out on the home by thinking they know better than I do, the next time we're doing exactly what I say, because they know that that's what it takes to successfully get across the finish line.
But when they do what you say, you mean they increase their trust factor in you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not necessarily pay more or do anything like that, but trusting my guidance because I'm the one that does this every day.
Do you have those, you know, I don't know if it's phrase, clause, whatever. You talked about appraisal waivers and inspection waivers and things like that. Do you have all that written down where you can hand somebody, this is the definition of this? I don't even know if people even defined a lot of that stuff. Or Joey, is that defined in your rules?
Sorry, no. The definitions of all these waivers that they would be entering into.
Because doesn't that fall under your lap or in your lap? I'm sorry.
No, I would say that, I mean, those are all contract terms. So I would say that
Okay.
that is something that would be discussed while writing up the offer
I
and
should have
being
went to
told,
you.
like, hey, this is what an appraisal gap waiver is, and this is how you exercise it. And obviously also with talking to Patrick, because I imagine he probably sees a lot of contracts. You know, it's kind of his thing.
I was just pointing to Patrick saying, I should have aimed that at you then. So do you tell or educate them on that?
The first law school class I ever attended was 8 a.m. Monday morning called contracts. So yeah, usually that is something that ends up in my lap. I think that in terms of defining what those things are, that contract's not going to show up it's usually in my inbox. It's not showing up there until it's already been executed. Now, I have the opportunity, for the most part, to modify that contract, to request modifications. I can't just unilaterally modify contracts. Boy, would I love that ability. But, of course,
They should give it to you.
Oh, man, Charlie.
I couldn't agree more.
We need to talk to the courts and the legislature about enacting your ideas.
Well, just tell them I said it was okay, and then it's good to go. You know.
Your mouth to God's ears. So but to the extent that they have questions still about it, because sometimes you explain something to somebody and they nod their head like they understand, and then the contract ends up in my inbox, and I say, you're waiving any right to object to the appraisal up to $20,000 below the purchase price, and they go, well, yeah, I my realtor said we had to do that in order to secure the contract. But can you explain that again? So yeah, that does sometimes happen where I am explaining it in the way that a lawyer would explain it, not necessarily how a real estate broker would explain it. Which those are going to be two different explanations, because a lawyer is going to take 25 minutes to explain all the what ifs, because that's just how we're built. Whereas the realtor is going to say, this is what that is.
Yeah, I want to interject here is that
Please.
if they don't understand the nuances of the different levers that they've pulled, that to me sounds like someone who is potentially going to back out of the deal because they don't even know what they've agreed to. So for me and my team, we spend, more time than ever before as we're writing up that offer and discussing what the offer is going to be. I'll spend 45 minutes on the phone going through these things in real time, right? Because you can't communicate as much effectively written down because there's always questions or scenarios that I'll give folks on
Sender,
how these
receiver,
things...
medium. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't hear what you say.
Exactly, just like text messages.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I know that once my clients go under contract, they're not backing out because they don't understand what they've agreed to. Now, when Charlie and his team come in and do the inspection, that's a whole different can of worms. But
Oh, my feeling just got hurt. I got
that's your
one
job to be
feeling.
there so that we know if we can move forward or not. But yeah, so what Patrick was saying, and then obviously for him to be able to memorialize some of those contract terms that aren't clearly laid out or defined within the standard contract that we use.
Yeah, our role is really to kind of firm it up. Okay, so it's one of the first things a real estate broker will learn in their classes is they're not allowed to draft contracts. That's considered unauthorized practice of law. So I will get calls from a broker saying, I'm writing up this offer and, can you give me some language? And I'll just say, look, write it up the way that makes sense to you. I can clarify if necessary in attorney review, especially in an environment like what we've got in today's market. I want them to be able to be nimble and move quickly. I don't want to bog them down and we're going to go back and forth 6 times on exactly what I want to see in that contract. If they want to run by me a lay version of what they think that term should look like, as long as it says what I think it's intending to say, I'll say, yeah, go with it. We'll clean it up in attorney review. And that's part of the communication between the broker and the attorney is to be able to collaborate as a team in a way that works for everyone in the process.
It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes.
It's
Often
true,
the case.
But and I'm not going to argue that point at all. But it's also, I think the biggest problem is when somebody doesn't really understand what they're doing, and then all of a sudden it comes to like, well, I didn't want to do that, you know. And as long as, and it goes back to expectations. It's like one of the most important words to me. You know, if whatever the client expects us to do, we need to do more. All right. If we don't meet what they expect of us, then our clients are going to be angry with us. And that's when those negative reviews come out. All right. It's angry people do angry things. So the real question is, you know, I guess the real thing I'm trying to get out of you, Tony, is how do you explain, or what would be, you know, like you give somebody the options. Okay, so we're going to go into a multiple bidding. Can you predict that? Or are you good at predicting when that's going to happen?
We don't always have to predict it. Sometimes all I have to do is ask.
It's
the
already
agent,
there.
right? And say,
Yeah.
hey, do you have other offers on the table right now? Most oftentimes they're going to tell you. If they don't, they're probably doing a disservice to their client. Now, obviously, everything needs to be at the direction of the seller because the realtor works for the seller. But you know, asking the right questions. If I just blindly write up an offer, it may already be under contract and I've just wasted mine and my client's time. If I don't at least ask those questions that I need to find out as much information as possible, and this is something that I actually talk with all my clients about in their initial consultation, is that one of the ways in which I'm going to be their expert advisor when it comes to crafting an offer is trying to find out what else is important to the seller besides the price. If we can figure out ways that we're going to craft the best possible offer and the strongest possible offer without necessarily having to come up in price, whether that means meeting the seller's super specific closing date request, or if they really want a large earnest money deposit, if those are going to be the make or break things that set us apart from another offer, we want to do that and find out, and the only way to do that is by asking those questions.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first lever I would think to pull, because it has almost zero effect on the ultimate deal, is can I put down more earnest money? If I could put down $50K of earnest money and not move my purchase price, well, that's going to go toward the purchase price anyway. I've given up virtually nothing other than putting that money somewhere for some period of time, and then I'm going to rely on the lawyer to help me protect that money.
Yeah, you're right, Patrick. I mean, I think you know, just like me. I mean, have you ever had a client that's lost their earnest money?
I've got 5 fingers, and I don't know, maybe a couple, but
Yeah.
but really out of hundreds and hundreds of people I've helped, it's very rare, and it's not so. On the buyer side, they're like, yeah, you know, glad to got my earnest money back. They're happy. And then on the seller side, having to explain to them why they're not going to get to keep any of the earnest money. Yeah, that one's always a tough conversation. But you say, look, this is what the contract says. It's just
Right.
This is what it is.
It's just my personal soapbox is that the earnest money is such a sort of farcical thing. I understand why it's there in principle, but in real practice, in the hundreds and hundreds of homes that I've sold, I've literally had a buyer lose their earnest money 0 times. And so that does play into explaining that as the first possible lever beyond being flexible on closing date, which is typically my ground zero for different levers that we can pull. But explaining about the earnest money, hey, this is kind of a made up thing where the more that you put down is going to make the seller feel more comfortable. However, me and my team are not going to let you lose that money.
Yeah.
That is that second piece that we kind of go into.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would characterize that is, you know, that I took a negotiation class many, many moons ago, and you're trading a 1 for a 10, right?
Yeah.
You want to, if I put $5 more thousand down in earnest money, and I don't have to put $5,000 more into the purchase price, I've just traded a 1 for a 10.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a wash, and is definitely something where we can easily give more. I've just sort of started combating that by just writing more earnest money in. Typically, I don't have a really in-depth, and especially in years past, I really didn't need to have an in-depth conversation with my clients about earnest money. I would say, by the way, this is what we discussed. This is your good faith funds. It's basically like making installment payments towards your closing, and it's very legally protected. And then I would put in what I felt comfortable with that I thought was a reasonable amount.
What is a reasonable amount?
It depends on the purchase price and primarily on how much they're putting down. If somebody's putting down 20%, I see no reason why the balance of earnest money, the second payment, can't bring that total of earnest money up to 5% of the purchase price. Now, if they're only putting 5% down, you're clearly not going to have them put their entire down payment down as earnest money. So then in that case, we'll typically cap it at about 2.5% to 3%.
And Patrick, what would cause somebody to lose their earnest money?
Well, you lose your earnest money when you breach the contract. Breaching the contract means that there was something that you were supposed to do in the contract that you didn't do. So I'll just use the most obvious example that I can think of, which is the day before closing, you have an epiphany that you need to move to the Himalayas and become a Buddhist monk and adopt a vow of silence. You have no... it's a worthy thing to do, I suppose, but you have no justification in that to say that I did not need to perform my obligations under the contract, in which case the seller would be entitled, or you would be liable to the seller rather, in an amount necessary to make them whole, as if you had not breached the contract.
And what does that mean, make them whole? I mean, what are they losing other than time that they could have sold their house to someone else?
Well, so in such a case, if they go back on the market, if they get, let's say, $10,000 less from the next arm's length buyer, that there's $10K right there. You've got holding costs. How much more interest did I need to pay toward my loan as a result of you didn't close on the date you were supposed to close on? Instead, I closed 6 weeks later. There was some there's some mortgage interest you're paying.
Okay.
The damages, and ultimately this would be one for a judge or a jury to decide how far out, how attenuated, whether or not the damages were proximately caused by the breach, which we're getting deeper and deeper into that first year contracts class that I attended. But
most of the time, lawsuits are really not worth it, right? I mean, what would be the magic number that somebody would have to sue for that makes it worthwhile paying an attorney's fees to go ahead and try and recover?
So rather than answer your question, so the easy answer is my rule of thumb is I generally would tell someone 50 to 100K before you'd even start thinking about getting a lawyer involved.
I could buy into that, yeah.
But that's the concept behind earnest money. Because of this, because of the expense and the time and everything involved in a lawsuit to recover your damages, their earnest money is to say, look, if I do something squirrely or weird or however you want to characterize it, and seller, you are out money, then this money is there held in escrow in theory for you to recover some or all of the damages you suffered. So that's the reason it has become a customary part of a real estate transaction. Now, the way that the contracts are written are that they've got these contingencies I've talked about before. Contingencies are things that need to be met in order for the contract to proceed. So the inspection contingency, which is the one you'd probably be most familiar with, if the home doesn't meet the buyer's expectation or what the buyer wants in terms of the condition of it, they can say this home does not meet the inspection contingency. I'm exercising that contingency, and I would like my earnest money back, or attorney review, or the mortgage contingency, or if it's a condo or common interest community.
What was it?
The appraisal
appraisal?
contingency.
Well, and that's one that we write into as lawyers, the appraisal contingency, and that goes to also the unusual circumstance that we see today of the appraisal gap, or even a full appraisal contingency waiver, which is another way.
But doesn't the shorter the time frame that all that stuff happens, lessen the punch in the jaw? You know what I mean by that?
Yes, I do know what you mean. So let's say we go under contract February 1 with a March 15th closing date. I would much rather that transaction fail February 3 than March 14.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For everyone involved, buyer, seller, whoever it is. Time is the commodity that is the least appreciated in terms of the value. And it's not until you've lost a bunch of time and then you measure that in what it costs you that you go, wow, time is really valuable. It's the one thing I can't make more of.
One thing, Tony, you don't know Joey all that well. Joey has a reputation that none, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, not one
Still
of
zero.
your, still zero, not one of your pre-approvals was ever denied by an underwriter. Is that true?
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Has that ever happened to you where somebody got pre-approved and then they couldn't get the loan, Tony?
To my personal clients, no. To some of the clients who my team members have helped in certain situations, yes. And sometimes there can be wonky things that have happened. I mean, they've been very extraordinary circumstances where, you know, income wasn't coded the right way on somebody's paycheck, so they weren't able to factor it in, or you know, someone went on paternity leave, so their income, real income, was actually less than what their stated yearly income would be had they not gone on paternity leave. But even in some of those instances, we're able to kind of get over the hump by figuring it out in the 11th hour. But on the listing side of things, I have run into a couple times buyers not being as qualified as their pre-approval stated, which ties into some of the due diligence that you have to do as a listing agent. We've been talking mostly about buyers today, but as a listing agent, you need to be either recognizing the name on that pre-approval letter, hopefully that's best case scenario, and if you don't recognize it, asking the buyer's agent, is this someone who you work with consistently, or is this someone the buyer's found on their own, just for your own knowledge sake? And then
I think that's important.
Yeah, and I mean, if the agent, who's a reputable agent who does a decent business, has worked with this person, even if I don't know them, that gives me an implicit level of trust beyond just a total question mark. And then the last thing is picking up the phone and calling the lender who's on that pre-approval and asking, have you looked at their pay stubs? Have you looked at their tax returns, right? Or is all of this information self-reported? And those are going to give you clues to how deep of a dive the lender has done into the qualifications of the buyer who's making an offer on your
I want to get more from Joey on that, but beforehand, we kind of failed to, do a little commercializing here. Tony, if people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, if they want to get a hold of me, you can reach me on my cell phone, which is 248-568-6732.
Say it again slower, please.
248-568-6732. They can also find me on Instagram. My team's Instagram is @ChicagoCrib. My personal Instagram is @TMattar. That's TMATTAR.
Terrific. And Patrick, if they have questions for you?
Oh, man, really? You're going to call me and ask questions? Of course you can call me and ask questions. 773.
And you get the free jokes. That's no charge extra.
No, I will dock your ear off, and if you laugh, boy, then you're really going to egg me on. 773-632-8330. Find me on Instagram, Loftus_law. Find me on TikTok, Loftus Law, @Loftus Law.
And I forgot to ask you this morning, how many followers do you have on your Cheap Flights TikTok? I got to throw a little plug on that one.
Charlie, I'm sad to report that although I was really hoping to walk in here with 42,000 followers, I am just short.
41 something, huh?
41,900 and something.
Oh my goodness,
So
that's still amazing after just a few weeks.
To write home about. That's awesome.
You know, I just couldn't find a stamp. I don't know. They're not all winners. Let me help you fly. If you like to travel and you don't like to pay a lot of money to do it, I am here for you. So let me help you fly. You might be my 42,000th follower, and you don't get anything for that, but that's okay.
And Joey, how do they get hold of you, please?
You can call or text me. It's 630-235-2405. Find me at thevaloannerd.com or across all the social medias as the VA Loan Nerd.
Sounds good. And my name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors and also the Home Inspection University of Illinois. Our school site is www.hiuil, so Home Inspection University, Illinois, and that's a .com. And our home inspection site is www.thehomeinspectors, that's a plural, ORS, and it's also a .com. And Joey, we were talking a little bit about the pre-approval stuff, and I know this is where you get all nerdy on me and things like that. But what are the mistakes? I mean, you know, I know you use a derogatory term.
There's
well,
just being lazy.
That's
there's
it.
No mistakes. There's lazy is what there is.
And that's what I was going
not
on.
knowing guidelines.
I can just get one off your website without doing anything, right? Sorry.
No, that's a great way to not buy a house. That company's website.
I like to egg him on. Sorry. Go ahead, Joey.
Oh, God. Yeah, you got me heated.
He's triggered.
If you're not reviewing docs like pay stubs, like when Tony said, well, there's a difference in paying pay stubs, like that's not a pre-approval. That is someone who just looked at it, said, here's a number, yay, we have this. Instead of looking, is this bonus? Is this commission? Is this a one-time bonus? Is this, an annual bonus? Things of that nature, right? You have to be able to recognize what is consistent, what is not, and if it's the same type of income that they're earning year over year, right? If someone is earning commission income or bonus income, I will ask them, because so many payroll companies will post pay stubs online, right? If I see something like Paylocity or ADP, I'm like, hey, can you get your last year's pay stub, year-end pay stub, so I can properly calculate income up front, right? The other, or in the state of Illinois, child support and alimony maintenance is deducted from pay, right? So I can see that up front. If they didn't disclose that in their app, I see it already. So now I'm able to reduce the income or add the debt for the child support, and that can affect where they qualify at. I'm still, damn it, you did it.
Sorry about that.
No, there's just big deposits. Like just knowing your freaking job is so easy. If you can Google, you could be a mortgage guy. Period. End of story. If you're lazy, then, whatever.
I'm going to argue a little bit on that. It's kind of like Chat GPT, garbage in, garbage out. So you got to know what it is that you're looking for. But Tony, you mentioned something a little bit earlier. You used the word reputation, and that's a huge word for me. All right. And I mean, quite frankly, we find that the real estate broker ends up becoming the hub of the entire real estate transaction. All right. Patrick does his thing on the law. Joey does his thing on the mortgage. I do my thing on the inspection thing. And how do you decide who you're going to, is partner the right word, or use as a vendor? Because you're risking your reputation. So how do you decide that if Joey's the right person for you or not? I mean, is this, I'm going to use anybody, and then if you screw me over, you're done, and I'll go get someone else until I find somebody, I don't know, I'm going back to Starship Troopers, till I find somebody better or I'm dead. One of the two. Johnny Rico, thank you.
That's a great question, Charlie. And it's funny that you used the word hub, because I used to describe it as that we were the hub cap, and all of the other all of the other folks that are involved in the transaction are the different spokes on that wheel, and that our job as the hubcap is to make sure that all the spokes stay intact and keep the wheel moving forward across the finish line. As far as it comes to reputation and choosing those trusted professionals to work with, it's a skill that you have to hone over time, and you do just build trust with people as time progresses and you have the opportunity to work with them. I've had lenders who I've worked with in the past who just happened to come to me with two separate clients that I didn't know they were pre-approved by this lender, and she did a great job. We ended up working together for several years. Another person was introduced to me through another colleague. So just like anything, dating, getting a job, it's very much word of mouth. Who do the people who I trust, and so on and so forth. And then I have had to have difficult conversations and difficult situations in the past where maybe someone's work starts suffering a little bit, or something happens and there's not responsibility taken. That was a pretty egregious breach of my trust in them, where then I have to move on and close that chapter. But it is very much like dating, having friends. It's not very different from that.
Well, and things change, quite frankly. When I started in this business, we really, the most elaborate tool that a home inspector carried was a gas sniffer. All right, that was it. When the senior inspectors, and I'm going back to 1993 right now, the senior inspector said, "Oh my God, don't ever put a photo in your report." Thank you, Patrick, for giggling at that. I really appreciate that. And I always have. I just didn't listen to them. I'm like, why wouldn't I want it in there? And they're like, well, if you miss something and you don't tell them, then you're going to have picture proof so they could come back and sue you. And I'm like, are you really telling me this? Where it comes in there. So things change. And now, there's thermal imaging, drones, there's combustion analysis. There's so many more tools and equipment that we can use to be more definitive in our findings, that even a lot of contractors don't use. But yet we still have people that are putting, for the home inspection business, they're using the Happy House reports. Have you ever seen the Happy House report, Patrick?
I'm sure I have.
No, you have? That's the one where there's like 5. They got a frowny face house and a happy face house. You've seen those?
Yeah.
And circle those. They're still in use today. All right, which to me is amazing. Sorry, I Joey was triggered. I'm triggered. Patrick, your turn.
That story gives me frowny face vibes.
There it is. Frowny face real estate vibe. I
Yeah.
like it.
I think that's the title of today's show.
Yeah.
Yeah, no lie. So,
I don't think any of us wants to hornswoggle a client and put them in a
No.
big boondoggle when they buy their house.
Hornswoggle.
You've
there
been
it
saving
is.
those.
One last one.
You've been saving those the whole
There it is.
episode, Joey.
Exactly.
I've been waiting for 20 minutes. I'm staring at the clock like, come on, Charlie.
No lie on that one. I wish I had a couple more of them and stuff like that. I was doing a whole bunch of research on where a lot of these old time sayings came from. One of my favorites was "It's raining cats and dogs." I'll give a little test question for you guys. Does anyone know where that came from?
I feel like I've heard it, but I can't remember.
So this comes from what I call the old Braveheart days. And of course, everything to me, my whole history is done through movies, all right? So when they had the thatch roofs, they wouldn't let the cats and the dogs in the house. And the cold nights, they would go up in the thatch because it was degrading and it was nice and warm. And then if it rained real hard, it would get real slippery. And the cats and dogs would slide off the roof, and you'd see them coming in front of the window, and it's raining cats and dogs. All right, so with that little bit of dumb history in the news and stuff like that. And we are getting to the end of our hour that we have in here. I do want to go one more time around the horn, if you don't mind, Tony. I'm going to ask that you start. How do people get hold of you, please?
People can find me on chicagocrib.com. They can also find me on Instagram at tmattar, Mattar, and at Chicago Crib, which is my team's account.
And somebody just called you a knowledge nugget, which I kind of like. Patrick, how do they get hold of you?
I'm trying to get over knowledge nugget.
That could have been one of the words, who knows?
I haven't contributed anything. I feel so bad. Why don't you email me? I feel like an email would be a nice way to kind of, ease our way into a new relationship. Patrick@loftus.law.
And Joey, one last time real quick.
Well, you can call or text me at 630-235-2405 or find me at thevaloannerd.com or across all the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd.
I love it. And my name is Charlie Belfontaine with Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. Our school site is hiuil.com. Repeating, that's hiuil.com. I'd like to give a special thank you to Devin Tingle. He's our producer and makes everybody sound good. So thank you, Devin, for doing all that. And my special thank you to my very favorite father-in-law, who I know is sitting in the driveway listening right now. Bernie, you're as special as they come. My name is Charlie, and I'm out.